Now, I am joined today with, and I'm going to try to nail this on the first go, with Kira Khoroshilova.
Yes, perfect.
Who is an expert in international SEO and has a great story to tell us and some cool stuff to talk about with international SEO. Now, before I do that, I want to let everybody know, I'm going to tell everyone what I know about international SEO. Okay, I'm done. All right. So, Kira, how's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Good. Doing good. Doing good. So can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself, your origin story, and what you're doing now?
Of course. Before I do that, though, my teeth just disappear when I smile with this filter. So everyone can just watch me without teeth, which is hilarious. But in terms of myself, my name's Kira. I'm based in the UK. I actually grew up in Singapore, and I'm relatively new to SEO. So I'm not going to say I've got 20 years of experience. I would have started when I was 6, if that was the case. I started 3 years ago, accidentally. So I was doing black hat SEO for an Egyptian millionaire in Cairo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was super random. I didn't even know that SEO existed at the time. And he just said, oh, do this content. And it was literally like copying different locations. So best things to do in Texas, best things to do in Boston, and just rewriting it. And I thought there was probably more to it than he was saying. So I started reading about it, and I thought it was incredible. And ever since then, I just never looked back. I worked my way up. My next job was a link builder, which is how we all start. And then by the end of it, I became head of SEO at an agency in Cheltenham, where I'm based. And almost a year ago is when I left and started my own business. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind and a lot of success very quickly, which is great, but obviously still lots to do. I think the quick success came from my obsessive personality, and the obsession was over SEO.
That helps a lot. Like people sometimes mock being obsessive, and it does have its drawbacks if you pick the wrong things to obsess about.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
being passionate and obsessive about the thing that you're doing was one of the reasons people succeed and other people don't. So
Exactly.
don't let people tell you that that's a bad quality.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned a black hat SEO. How do you define? Was it just because it was changing the content, or?
Well, back in the day, it was plagiarizing. It was just OG plagiarism and incredible keyword stuffing. And, when you turn the keywords white and you hide them behind text, it was like that kind of stuff. It wasn't even that long ago. I can't believe people do that. But yeah, that was my first introduction to SEO.
Okay. And then you said you worked for an agency. What was that like? Because that's something I've never done. I mean, I've had my own, but I've never been the SEO person at an agency.
But honestly, I think that's part of the reason of why I got to where I am today, was just the caliber of the clients that we had at the agency and the number of clients that I had to handle by myself. So it was, from SaaS to medical to finance to horseback riding products. So lots of e-commerce. And it was obviously, as you know, with SEO, it's no cookie cutter technique. You have to really study each industry individually. And because we had 60 to 70 clients and I was head of SEO and I had to, know the strategy inside and out, it was like a boot camp for many, many years. And I'm really grateful for that, because I know when you're in-house, sometimes you don't really get the exposure to all those issues. So it was really tough. Like, thinking back to it, it was a huge challenge, but it was well worth it for me, at least.
Okay. Like, what would you, what kind of stuff do they have you do? Like, this is a whole new world to me. So like,
Yeah. Oh my God, what didn't they have me do? Honestly, it was strategy building. So we would do the initial auditing for every single client, the strategy building, the on page, the off page. So we had a link building department within the agency, within one of the agencies, and they did digital PR, digital profiling. So digital profiling is when you actually put an anchor link on the keyword of the client. So instead of the URL or the business name, which is a lot more valuable. So our link building campaigns were actually a lot more impactful than many others. obviously the technical analysis, content, not actual production, but content brief creation, keyword research, literally everything under the sun.
Sounds like they did a lot more than most big agencies that I've interacted with. A lot of that times they just like try to get as a big volume and just do like some citations and change your meta tiles and charge you $300 a month. Like that's what I picture when I think of big SEO agencies.
Yeah, I mean, we had those as well. So the first one that I worked at, it was kind of like that. It was a maintenance contract and it was very low cost, so about £300. But the next agency, it was quite big contract. So we had one that was over 100 hours a month of SEO. And that's when the good stuff starts. You can see the difference, you can see the impact you're making. So that was really valuable. I much preferred the big retainers instead of those tiny maintenance ones.
Yeah, because there's no challenge and there's really no money unless you're doing hundreds of clients like that. So
Exactly, and nothing to do. You just
yeah,
sit there.
yeah. So what made you take the jump to going out on your own? That's always scary. I did mine about 8 years ago.
It is scary, isn't it? I'm
Yeah.
glad you know the feeling. It was absolutely terrifying, but being the person I am, so I haven't talked about this, so that's a really good question. I decided one evening that I'm not sure if this is for me anymore. And I spoke to my husband about it, and he said, quit. He said, you can do so much better. And I think he was just trying to make me feel better. And so the next morning I went into work and I quit.
Wow.
And I told him and I said, "Hey, I've just quit." It was 9:15 AM, and he was like, "What? Already?" And I walked out the door. Obviously, I did my, 2-week notice period, and I walked out. I had nothing, so I had no clients, nothing, but I knew that I was gonna figure it out. I just had faith in myself, and my skills, and I just thought I could do better and I could spend my time elsewhere and I could do it the way I want to do it and make the impact that I want to make.
Mhm.
And it just picked up, I was referred, there was word of mouth to start off with, and then I started gaining traction, and then, yeah, and the rest is history, I guess.
Wow, that's incredible. Most people have a longer time of like debating it. Like I
Yeah.
was debating it for months, even though I was like making almost about the same for doing what I was doing as I
Mm,
was at my job, to the point where being at work was costing me money.
yeah,
It was still scary to like, cut your income in half, from
yeah.
day one. But yeah, so that's a really cool story. I didn't. That's thank you for sharing that. So so you say it kind of just gained traction from word of mouth and stuff. How did you go about getting your first couple clients? I asked that because there are people here that will definitely want to know that. So
Well, my first client, and I think I got lucky in this, was actually someone that I went to school with.
hmm,
He wasn't even really my friend, but he converts classic cars to electric. So it's quite a high ticket business. And he came to me back when I was working at my first agency 3 years ago and said, I need your help. I guess because he knew me. And then we signed him onto the agency. The site had just zeros all around. He just had his little Wix website, a couple of pages. I love remembering that day when he came in and I looked at the stats and it was just nothing. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? And now he turns over multiple millions. So after that agency, so he left and then he followed me once I started my own business.
oh,
We continued to work together. He's been a client of mine personally for over 18 months now.
that's
Um, and yeah, he's thriving. He's the market leader in the UK for electric conversions of classic Land Rovers. And yeah, he's loving it. He does no other marketing apart from SEO, and it's a bit of like a success story for both of us. So back to the question of how do you actually get your first client, I would say usually a referral or a word of mouth is the best way, and then you really put all your heart and soul into that one client. And if you can get a really great testimonial from them, which I luckily got from this person, it was like a page long. It was a whole essay of how much he appreciated my work and me as a person. And that putting that out just propelled me further because there's already proof
yeah.
that you can do your job. It is always the hardest. You know how they say your first million is the hardest to make, your
Mhm.
first client is the hardest to get as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, you're right that having like a good testimonial or case study or whatever would be
Yeah.
is very easy to leverage. So
Mhm.
that's cool. And you mentioned that he had nothing at the beginning. I'm always like two minds of that. One, it means God, I'm going to have a lot of work to do,
Yeah.
but it's also the easiest way to get a lot of results quickly because
Mhm.
if you have nothing, everything is up. So
Exactly.
that's how I
Ex
try to look at it. You know, um,
exactly.
it's I equate it to like losing weight. When you start
Mhm.
losing weight, you lose a lot really fast. So that's
Mhm.
like, yeah, like what keeps the momentum going. So you told me that you are into like international SEO. Can you explain what that is and then like what's different about it and just the whole thing?
Yeah, of course. So I got into international SEO uh, for context because of my background. So I lived in 10 different countries.
Wow.
I left my home country when I was 7, traveled around the world. I speak 3 languages. I live in, a foreign country to me. And I always had a different outlook on just globalization in general. And I knew international SEO was a concept, but I always saw that there were a lot of things missing. So international SEO is essentially when you've got a domain that wants to target multiple countries or multiple demographics around the world. So you could have a local US website that only sells to people in the US, or you can have a global enterprise like Apple that, that's a good example of international SEO.
Yeah.
So you want to target more people. And I saw that everyone was really hyper focused on the hreflang implementation. So that's the technical SEO aspect. So
Okay.
how you actually build out your website and what you do, which is super important, really important, very difficult to do as well. But one thing that people were leaving behind was the content, first of all. So people were just Google translating stuff, which is freaking awful
Mm.
in itself. After ChatGPT came along, it got a little bit better, but still not great because it's a robot translating.
Right.
So people were getting traffic, but people weren't getting the right conversions or even the right traffic with their translated websites.
Mm.
And as Google got smarter, especially with the rise of AI, those results started diminishing. So I saw that a lot of the gaps that people needed to fill was the cultural appropriation and actually targeting that content to the right demographic, which is what my presentation at the SEO Mastery Summit in Vietnam was about remembering the cultural sensitivity of the people that you're trying to sell to, not just the code that you're trying to implement.
Mm. I think that's a great point because I don't want to insult my audience, but SEOs tend to be very mechanical in the way that they think about things, and
Yeah.
to them ranking is all that matters. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? Like once they get a site ranked, nothing else matters. So
mhm.
thinking about those things, I think, is very important. Like, so that seems like it could be a pretty big job on a big site, right? Like having to translate every single page. Is there like a way to make that not suck? I guess is the way to say
Um, no,
it.
is the short answer. Honestly, it's if you hate it, you're just gonna hate it. But if you kind of look at the bigger picture and think that you're gonna make the most perfect piece of content, the most perfect page for this person in Brazil, for example, then like how awesome is that? If someone is searching in, the north of Brazil for a corporate negotiation training program and they couldn't find anything for months, and then all of a sudden they find this and it's covering exactly the problem that they're talking about, and they're like, holy shit, this is what I've been looking for. Like that to me is incredible. So to me, it never sucks. But I know a lot of people hate hreflang or just international SEO in general, and the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So, I
it,
mean,
it
do you just have to get someone that knows each individual language to manually translate all of it?
I mean, what we do, so I've got my agency Diary of an SEO, which is my like broad SEO agency, and I've got my Kira Khoroshilova SEO, which is this thing up here. So I work with enterprise and luxury brands. So our SEO retainers are naturally very high ticket. And the
Okay.
reason for that, to go back to your question, is the quality needed to get people to where they need to be. So, in terms of translation, you can't just get a translator. you need to get someone who is, UN grade to
Wow.
interpret that. Even if, so people say, oh, like I can't use chat GPT now. Well, you can, but you always need that final point of QA to be that interpreter to translate that content correctly for you and actually use the words that people want to see when searching for something. So that's the one big part, is the translation team and the QA team for the content side of things. So that
Okay.
takes a long time.
How would you find somebody like that?
Well, contacts mainly.
Okay.
I for this kind of stuff, it depends on the caliber of the client that you're working with. I'm sure people would think, oh, how about Fiverr? You can go to Fiverr if you want to, but you're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack at that
Mhm.
point. You need someone really credible. So if you've got connections in the UN who know people who have either retired or, I don't know, professional translators on a global scale is how you need to find them, or specialist sites for interpreters, is what I always use.
Okay. And then once you find a good one for each language, you just don't let them go.
Yes, exactly. And you pay them really well as well.
Okay. I I don't have experience in doing this, but I understand it because I have, legit has customers all over the world,
Mm,
and it's a user generated content site, so it's almost impossible unless there's something
mm,
you know of.
mm.
But the way we've kind of dealt with that is just having like brand ambassadors in other countries. So that's
Yeah. Yeah, that works really well as well, actually. And a lot of the time, these brand ambassadors, they would actually be willing to either lower their prices or sometimes do it for like a peppercorn fee, just because they really love like their country and their culture. And it's kind of the mindset that I have, is to kind of help the world or help search become more globalized and more accessible to all.
yeah. Yeah, I really wish I had a better solution for that, but I don't know what it is yet. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but
Yeah,
um,
user generated content is really tough, to be honest. Even I haven't fully cracked that, I can't say.
yeah.
But
I made this analogy in the email I sent out about this stream, was that and it's not exactly the same, but like I saw an interview with Mr. Beast where he said that
Mhm,
he took all of his channels and like got them professionally translated into Spanish and French and all
mhm,
these other things because I don't know the number. This number may be way off, but 70% of the world doesn't speak English and they can't watch his stuff. So he took
mhm.
all that effort into it. And it sounds like if there's kind of for a similar reason for what you do, is that he wants everyone to have a chance to participate, basically.
Exactly, as they should. And I don't know if you've seen, this was a couple of weeks ago, I think, the new ChatGPT version that simultaneously translates your speech.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
4.0 or whatever it is.
exactly. And that is revolutionary, and that's exactly what people need to use. I mean, it's still early days. We know AI sucks
Yeah.
sometimes. But yeah, that was incredible news for the world of international SEO as well.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned was being like culturally sensitive. I've had to learn that over the years a lot because I have customers in a lot of different countries, but even on our team at Legit, we have people on every continent except for Antarctica now, and like literally like 12 different time zones. So I've had to learn like like nuances. I've also like, here's a good example. A lot of the freelancers on Legit, they like to call me boss. And
Mhm.
I was like, at first, I was like, you really don't have to call me that. I'm not
Yeah.
your boss. And they're like, no, no, it's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
And, and I'm like, and then learning those little nuances has helped me a lot. I've been on the other side of them a couple of times too, where one guy was mad at me and said, you are my brother-in-law. I was like, that's not that much of an insult, but apparently that's like the worst thing me could say. But
Yeah.
my point to those stories is that those little things matter, right?
Exactly, and they matter so much, especially with the recent algorithm updates as well, so for search, obviously. Even tiny things that we wouldn't normally think about. So in US English, you would spell personalized with a Z.
Yeah.
In British English, you would spell it with an S. And just that matters, and we
Yeah.
don't think about that shit, do we? But we
Uh,
have to.
yeah. Actually, when I was making the description for this
Mm,
video, that you sent me of your background, I noticed that actually that you had an S instead of a Z because we
exactly.
E and you use an S. So I make fun of that. Keith, who was on earlier, is actually our UK ambassador. We joke back and forth about stuff like that, like how you put an unnecessary U in a lot of words and stuff like that.
Yeah, make it more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you go about learning those? Like, is that something is that the translator's job, or like, because one thing I've struggled with, like, again, bringing it back to like the team at Legit, I want to respect everyone's traditions and holidays, but I don't know everybody's holidays. So I just told everyone they can pick whatever holidays matter the most to them to have the day. It's like some people don't care about Christmas. They might care about, whatever. So how do you like learn those things?
With time. So it obviously depends on the client you're working with. A lot of those things I already know because I lived there. So I've lived in many countries. So when a client comes to me, I probably know the culture of 50% of them. But there's still research to be done. So I would read documentation, so from Google Scholar, on culture and phrasing and the linguistic aspect of it. And because there's a lot more than just spelling, isn't there? There's
Oh yeah.
Australians, like, they say flip-flops are thongs and just random stuff like that. So those things you always have to remind yourself of, and that's obviously with the help of the QA of the translator, or the work of the translator, and just common knowledge. Because with practice, the more you do something, the easier it gets. So it's
Yeah.
almost hard for me to remember when I didn't know this, but it was just putting in the time to focus on those things. And it's a lot more than that as well. And maybe later on, I'll tell you a little bit more about examples of different countries. That's more than just spelling. So when you're trying to sell the same product across different countries.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear some of that. Well, another one that I run into a lot is in the UK, they call a vacation a holiday, whereas in the United States, a holiday is Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that, and we call it a vacation. And like, I've actually had that like make conversations complicated before because like we weren't using the same words until I learned to be multicultural like that. So.
Exactly. And one funny thing, when I first moved to the UK, I moved from the US, so I used to call, well, in the UK, pants is underwear. But in the US, pants is pants, like trousers.
Yeah.
So that was really funny for a few years because everyone, like all the Brits, would be like, "What?"
Yeah, that's crazy. I've just had to kind of learn it on the fly, so it
Yeah.
seems like you kind of lived it, so that you have an advantage. So I guess that's a good point, is that you leveraged the things that have happened in your life with the moving around and things into your business, because it gives you a unique perspective, right? Like a skill set that you can't really go learn. Would you say that's true?
Oh, 100%. And I think I very luckily fell into it because I know there's incredible SEOs all around the world. There's incredible international SEOs that have a lot to offer as well. And maybe a lot of them are better than me, but nobody lived that life that I did. So b if, when I speak to clients and they say like, "Why you?" Which is a very common question. They're like, "Why are you better than everyone?" And I said, "Well, I'm not, but you wouldn't find anyone else who does what I do the way I do it," which is exactly why you and I would work well together, because I've got these skills, but you're gonna have to, live a life of 26 years and grow up in 11 different countries to see what I see.
Right. So sign here or learn it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a great answer. And it's one that, this is a bit off topic, but it's one that SEO agencies tend to suck at. Like
Mhm.
I have groups specifically for SEO owners, or not SEO, but it's for agency owners. And
Mhm.
one time I was like, what makes your agency unique from everybody else's? And the most common answer was, we get results. I was like, that's not making you unique. Like,
That
it's good. That's the bare minimum. It should be assumed that you get results.
yeah.
And most of them can't explain why they are unique. And I guess we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but I just, having that experience that
Mhm.
you can't replicate. Like, there's probably 100 people in the world that have that exact framework, maybe less. I don't know. So
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
having a unique selling point, I guess, is my point. Is very not only as a selling point but as a skill set. So
Exactly. Yeah, and with the get results thing, I'm thinking about it now, probably every agency says they're results driven on their website, like 100%. I don't know one that doesn't say
yeah,
we're results driven, which is quite a funny, like, USP.
yeah, because it's not unique when everybody is saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be like going to a restaurant and saying, "We always deliver your food to the table." Like,
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
that supposed to be a given, you know? Like,
Yeah,
it's good that you do that, but I kind of assume that going in, like, what above that makes you different?
exactly. Yeah, and I bet they've spent like hours thinking about it as well. Like, what value should we put on our website? Like, or
Yeah.
results. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, most of them don't spend any time thinking about it, really. So, anyway, I feel like I'm dunking on agency owners a little bit too much. So, all right. So, I have like a technical question about it. I've seen for sites that have different languages, I've seen a
Mm,
couple different ways of going about it. They will have like some site.com slash, the
mhm.
country code. And then there's like the subdomain. What's the best way to go about that?
That's a really good question because people say, "What is the best way?" And then they either go off an example of like a big enterprise and they're like, "Oh, it works for them. That's cool. I'll do the same thing." But it's not true. So when first of all, I'll give a little bit of an insight. So there's four main structures. There's CCTLDs, so that's country code top level domains. So that's like Amazon.ca, so Amazon Canada. Then you've got the subdomains, and then that would be trip.com. So theirs is uk.trip.com. Then you've got a subdirectory, which is apple.com/fr, so France. And then you've got parameters. So that's I'm not going to talk about that because I don't like it. But three three main ones, and all of them work. So all of them work, but they all work because there's a certain company structure.
Okay.
So with a CCTLD, you don't mind the server location and you can easily separate your site. So you can have Amazon FR, Amazon CN, China, Amazon RU, Russia, and so on. And it's very clear geo targeting. So if you see Amazon.ca, you know it's Amazon Canada. You're not gonna confuse that. Then with subdomains, those are really easy to set up and you can have multiple server locations. So obviously that helps with loading times across the world. So you can omit the whole CDN situation. So a CDN basically speeds up your connection. And then subdirectories, which are my personal favorites, just based on the clients that I've worked with. That's the domain.com/country. So as a subfolder.
Got it.
And those are really low maintenance. They're not that easy to set up, to be honest, but once it is set up, it's quite easy to maintain. But then all of these have their pros and cons, right?
Mhm.
So with a subdirectory, you've got a single server location. So then you have to bring in the CDN situation.
For those
Um,
that don't know, a CDN is like Cloudflare. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Content delivery network. So it bounces off the closest server to the website to speed up your location connection. So I always say we need to actually sit down and like see what we want from the website and also see your company structure. So this thing is really huge because a lot of big companies they want autonomy within their franchise or within the location, in which case trying to tell them to do a subdirectory is like murder for them. They're like, why would I do that? Why would I sync my domain into the .com because then I have no power? And you also manage it on one dashboard. So that's apparently like a crazy headache for them. And sometimes that like it's refused fully based on the company structure. So how much autonomy every country wants, and that has to be factored in as well. But people don't really think about that because that's not really SEO. But
right.
SEO works from all angles. It has to work for the company because you can't force them into something if the company doesn't work that way.
Yeah. It sounds like you have to spend a lot more time on discovery, right? Like when you bring somebody on than you would if it was just a one location type of thing, right? You have to really dig in to their use case.
Yeah, exactly. And our audit, so for clients of such caliber, even if it's like one or two countries, the audit is over 150 hours
Oh, wow.
before we even do anything. So they ask me a question and I'm like, I don't know, just like let me do this first and then I will tell you everything you want to know. Because you have to, leave no stone unturned to
Yeah.
actually give them an answer.
I bet some people hate that, right? Like they hate that you can't just say, yeah, you just do this. It's like they give
Yeah,
you,
exactly. They're like, "What? Why can't just tell me? Like, is it that
yeah,
difficult?" I'm like, Yes, it is. It is difficult."
yeah. If it wasn't, you could do it. Would probably be what you're thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So they complain. I'm like, "You do it then. Go on.
Yeah.
Do it."
Yeah. I forget what I was going to say. So let's see if we have any questions. For international SEO, what should be the best method to go for multi-language plugins or the hreflang tag? So a plugin or the do it by code. I'm thinking by code, right?
It depends, to be honest. I've done it both ways, and both ways work quite well, to be honest. I think again, I'm gonna say it depends, which is an SEO's favorite phrase,
Yeah.
but it literally depends. So for the multi-language plugins, there's WordPress multi-language, which is really good, to be honest, really easy, and Weglot. Those both of those are really, really good. But I would say if you have, I don't know, 4 or 5 countries, that could still cut it. If you've got 67,
Wow.
I'd be so one of my clients is 67 countries, so
I don't think I
67.
could even name 67 countries.
Exactly, yeah, literally. Um, and for that, we always do sitemap hreflang implementation because it's just the easiest to manage for us. But like I say, it just depends on your situation. So for this question, how many countries are you targeting? How many countries do you want to target in the next 5 years? What is your current setup of the site? So you have to ask yourself all those questions before you do it because sometimes the plugin is fine. You don't have to spend more time on the tags.
Okay. Let's see. Shazia says informative session. Thank you. Jose says hello, Chris. Best in health. Thank you. Can I please have a practical SEO session with you? My target is to learn and get mentored by top SEO specialists. I just want to do some SEO work with you, please. Do you have any kind of training or anything?
Yeah, yeah, why not? Just get in touch with me after,
Okay.
through YouTube, I guess, but yeah, please do.
I'll put your link on there in a bit.
Yes, awesome.
Will this be available? Yes, wherever you're watching, you'll be able to watch it again in the future. Difference Canada to US color. Yeah, like I said, add in
Yeah,
unnecessary reviews.
yeah.
Joseph says, well, kind of just covered this, but how do you offer courses I want to learn more about for international SEO?
I don't yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
I think you probably not that you need my advice, but I think you probably should. I think there would be interest in it.
A lot of people have told me that, yeah, it's
And once again, you would be able to carve out your being the expert on that one thing,
Mm,
you know?
exactly, yeah, I mean, it's so like I said, it's such early days, like, it's not all even a year old yet, so I'm a bit like a deer in headlights, but it is definitely in the books, yeah.
Okay. How could be the answer for USP be like, we feel you and we consider it as, I'm not sure okay. So you're saying, would this be a good USP? I think it's the question. We feel you and we consider it as our business for every approach. That's a nice thing to say, but it's not really a unique selling proposition, would be
Mm,
my answer to that.
mm, yeah.
Aaron says multi-language sites are a lot of work to maintain. Is that
Yeah, oh my god, Erin, you have no idea. I mean, I'm sure you do have an idea because 'cause you've just written that, but yeah, it is a lot of brain power.
I would think one of the challenges is if you decide to change one paragraph, you have to change it 67 times rather than one. You know, if you have like a different language version of every page, right?
Exactly, as one example, but there's also if you're updating or removing pages in within your hreflang structure, you remove one, so obviously, it has to reference its counterparts plus the default version of itself. But then if you remove one or change one, then your whole thing falls apart. So if you forget, for example, and then good luck trying to find it. I mean, thank God there are tools now like Alita's tools and hreflang builder to help you build it out. But you have to be, 100% concentration every time you do any work on the site, especially in the back end.
That's been, I see, I wouldn't have thought of any of that. So,
Yeah.
what is your biggest challenge in international SEO?
What I've just said, to be honest, just the upkeep, like you can't relax when you do it. Sometimes you've got mindless tasks, but it's not the case for these international SEO projects. So the technical aspect is a huge challenge. to make sure that it's working, because sometimes it can say that, yeah, it's all good, but it's not. The next thing is the cultural appropriation and the research done per country. And I'll go into that a little bit later, and that'll answer your question. So I'll say the biggest challenge of them all is appropriating the content to the demographic that you're trying to sell to.
Okay. Brian, who was on the channel, I think last week, says, love this subdirectory FTW.
Hell yeah, I agree.
This part of the discussion is really, for me, the question, what makes you the best, has been a serious game changer across all sectors. This answer and approach to it given me, oh, well, I'm glad you benefited from it.
That's sweet. Well done.
Brian says, do you do anything different when approaching LD plus JSON markup schema in multiple languages?
Oh my God, yes. That's another huge thing. I mean, to go back to basics, you have to update your schema depending on the location, of course. So that would be, say, if you've got a satellite address for all of those places, that has to be updated per domain. So if we take web page schema as an example, as the easiest one, so you have the business name, the address, the location, the phone number, the description. So again, you have to do your research depending on if it's an English search in that country or if it's a local search in that country. Because search is predominantly English a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So if we're, let's take France, for example. I don't remember if this is 100% true, but most parts of France, their search is actually in English. So in that case, depending on the page that you're optimizing, your content and subsequently your schema and your targeting will be depending on the search, if that makes sense. So it can be FR, so French for France, or it can be ENFR, so English for France. So that becomes a little bit complicated. So you have to kind of break up the site. It's no longer one big thing. It's just elements of a greater domain when you start working with languages and JSON and everything else.
Good Lord. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I never chose to get into this line of
Yeah.
SEO. So thank you for doing what's needed. How about SG with international SEO? Yeah, I guess it probably pulls. I don't know. I don't really understand that question. I know it's the AI thing that Google does, but I don't know what you're really asking.
I think so. This actually, because with search generated results, they actually pull a lot of like link results. So that's why people are saying that link building has become it was always important, but a lot more important now. And this goes into getting local links, so getting link building done for that country. So when you search for something, the SGE result is pulled based on all the information that you see in that demographic. So the links should be, say, like, I'm going to keep picking on France. If we're working on a French domain, to help with SGE discovery, you need to remember the cultural nuance. So that's the whole big thing I've been blabbing about this whole time. Then also the link building in France for that commercial page that you're working on. So it's not global link building, it's link building for France, for French publications. So that will help with your discovery a lot as well.
Right. How do you deal with multi-language sites where non-Roman character set is used, especially with alt tags and schema?
That's a really good question. Again, it depends on the website, to be honest. So let's take Chinese. Why don't we take Chinese? So a lot of the time, the schema on these Chinese websites can be in English as well. Metadata, of course, because we work across Baidu and Google if it's China. Then your metadata would have to be either English and Chinese. So you've got one page with multiple versions of it. So one in Chinese, one in English, or just in English or just in Chinese based on the search. So with alt tags, I would do them in Chinese. And schema, I would do either in Chinese or English, depending on what I'm discovering.
Do you get a lot of Chinese? Because I know their internet's pretty restricted.
Yeah, it's so different. We get a few, but it's a whole different beast, to be honest. That's like a whole other podcast episode on Chinese SEO.
That makes a lot of sense because I don't know a lot about it. I just know that they have like, the national firewall and all that stuff that they have to deal with.
Exactly, and it's the same as Russian SEO. So Yandex is very different. The algorithm is completely different as well, and obviously the application of international SEO across Russian domains is also very different.
What could be the best way to know about language used? So I guess what do you do when there's countries that have more than one language that is where there's not one dominant language? How does that work?
So we're search driven in SEO, right? So that would you're going off search volumes. So if let's take Canada because they've got multiple languages, or Switzerland actually, they've got 4 national languages. You would do it based on search volume and see if if there's no search in a certain language like Italian in Switzerland, then you can even do a simple Google Translate for that because there's no search, so you don't really have to worry about it. But any countries that show significant search, like French and Quebec, then you have to keep that in mind.
Interesting. That's a great question. I wouldn't have thought of that either.
That is a really good question. Yeah.
We'll do one more question and then we'll move on. If someone had to pick a specific service within the international SEO aspect, what would you recommend is the most demanding skill? So if somebody just wanted to focus on a part of it, what should they focus on?
What if you want to focus on something within international SEO?
Yeah.
Well, the hreflang. So learn hreflang if you had to do one thing. So technical SEO for hreflang would be the best one to do.
Yeah, and that's a good skill to have in general. So
yeah, exactly.
Do you do anything like, is everything you do for organic SEO? Do you do anything with like Google, whatever they call it this week, Google Maps, Google Business?
Yeah, I do that as well. So all of that is included, but of course, Maps is more local.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't specialize in that, but I can do it if they ask me to do it. But generally, everything we do on the site, obviously, we optimize Google Business regardless, and that tends to pull everything up anyway.
Okay, I mainly asked that because a lot of the audience here does local SEO, so I know even if they didn't ask, I know somebody was wondering about it.
Just thinking about it, yeah.
And you mentioned something. I hope I don't get this term wrong. It's about cultural appropriation. Was that the term you used?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, I kind of use it in a positive way. I know, like in the world, people say, "Oh, that's cultural appropriation," is a negative term, but kind of just thinking about again what the people in that country want to see. So it's hard to get into someone else's brain who's not from your country. But I wanted to share a couple of examples on this. So this is based on the research that we've done, and I've got 3 good examples of this.
Do you need the screen?
Do
you need the screen? Or?
I can just talk about it.
Okay.
So the first one, I don't know if you will notice this because you are in the US, but one big thing, and this is a great example of culture. So this is a case study of one of my clients. So negotiation training, so corporate negotiation, and they're trying to sell to many, many countries around the world. And then we take Germany and the US as an example. Those two could not be more different. And the biggest difference within them, apart from the language, is the privacy and the GDPR focus. In the US, people, there's some skepticism around it. Some people are really into it, but in general, it's a bit more lax. In Germany, it's very, I need to see my privacy laws. Show me all the privacy laws, terms and conditions in your face. So the bounce rate is actually higher if you don't show GDPR and privacy laws on that landing page. So exactly, it is super interesting, and I didn't know about it before, but when I researched on it, it was incredible to see the actual data and statistics on the way a web page should be structured for those 2 countries.
That's very, and it's not surprising to me, by the way, because I don't want to insult any portion of my audience here, but
Yeah.
Europeans in general are much more difficult to deal with on the privacy type stuff than
Mhm.
Americans are. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think also the more research I do on this cultural stuff, like the broader my horizons get, you know, because when I was doing my SEO Mastery Summit talk, I was saying, you know, who's from here, like who's from these countries, and saying, well, you guys are like this, you guys are like that, which is normally not something that people do. Like you don't point out what a country is like.
yeah,
And they were all like, yeah, 100%. So the fact that we unite over these differences is incredible in itself. So that's Germany and US. So their language delivery, US again, is a bit more relaxed. You know, they like a playful tone, don't really care about like structure as much as they care about the feeling they get, you know, that we're in it together. But in
Mhm.
Germany, it's very structured, very by the book. You know, you tell me how private this is, you tell me what you want, and we're going to do it. So it's super direct. Um, and the next one is Brazil and India, and that's on their cultural beliefs on negotiation and solving conflict. So in India, very there's a strong sense of hierarchy, strong sense of family. They always find a peaceful yet logical solution to get things done as quickly as possible. In Brazil, people are more relaxed about their time. So obviously the target that you're trying to sell is not going to be, you know, do this quickly. It's going to be find a peaceful solution, spend as much time as you need, become friends. So it's very, very relaxed for people in Brazil for the most part. I'm not generalizing. I know people are different, but for the masses, those two things. So the landing pages for the same service for those two countries are polar opposites, even though you're selling the exact same thing to them.
that's fascinating. I wouldn't have considered, like, the first example made sense to me, but that I
Yeah,
wouldn't have considered at all.
exactly. And like nobody knows that unless they've researched on it and
Yeah.
unless they've kind of studied the way that business is done in those countries, especially on such a high level. And the last example, and I think this would make sense, is Japan and Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
Is really different. So the Japanese, if we focus on the automotive industry, so for the Japanese, it's efficiency, eco-friendliness, quick turnaround. At, as examples, again, I don't want to generalize, but this is just based on what we've done before. And Saudi Arabia is luxury, comfort, so when you're trying to sell any automotive service, you have to focus on those. So Saudi is kinship and luxury, Japan is modesty, minimalism, if we were to summarize those two things.
That's interesting too. The Saudi one makes a lot of sense, but like the eco-friendliness, I never would have associated that with Japan.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So those my favorite examples, those three groups. Um, and yeah, so that just shows you how different we all are. You know, this is three groups of countries. We've got 198 of them.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a lot to do, a lot to study, and a lot to understand as well.
How many of the 198, how many have you worked with?
75 maybe?
Yeah,
70, yeah. So not quite 198, but quite a few.
yeah, about half. So.
Yeah, yeah, not too bad.
Brian says cultural sensitivity is important. The thumbs up doesn't always mean like. Some cultures see that as flipping the bird. That's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that actually.
I
Oh,
had a picture because I hate it, but occasionally I go get like pictures done for like social media. And the
mm.
one where the photographer had me like on the phone with my feet up on the desk. And that was really offensive to some countries because apparently showing
Oh,
the
yeah.
bottom of your feet is really insulting to them.
Mhm,
I got some
mhm.
really nasty feedback on that picture.
Oh my god, yeah, and that's really interesting because we never mean bad with these things.
Right.
For some countries, it's ridiculous, like taking your shoes off. I don't remember what it's like in the US actually, but in the UK, people don't take their shoes off ever, and that just makes my skin crawl. So my culture is that you always take your shoes off.
Yeah. That's no, that's interesting. I'm barefoot right now. So
Oh, good. Good.
um How do you research cultural context? Just talking to the locals?
There's a lot of scholar documentation. So on Google Scholar, if you research countries, so sometimes you won't find a comparison. Like Germany and the US and China in the US, you can find on Google Scholar, but sometimes you have to do it just case by case. So, like a cultural study on X country, the customs of X country. That bit is not actually so difficult after you start doing it because you read of their customs and their culture a little bit and you start to understand because you can group people into, like super conservative with their views, expressive. So you start to categorize them after a while and you're like, oh, okay, this is group one, this is group two.
Do you have like specific client avatars for each country or like customer avatars for each one? Because I've noticed you've used a lot of adjectives to describe the different groups. I was wondering if you have like something you plug that into, or how does that work?
Yeah, I put them into groups actually. So we've got like from 1 to 4, but sometimes it's more, to be honest. It's hard to just group them all. But countries, a lot of Southeast Asian countries, so like Philippines, Thailand, Myanmar or something, they would usually be in one group. Because it's continental as well, like the Slavic countries, Eastern Europe, our like attitudes are very similar and our beliefs are very similar as well. So that would be another group. Central Asia is usually another group. And then you can group them on like perspective or like views on comfort, views on time, which is a really big thing as well.
Wow. I can see having a database like that could be very helpful over time.
Super helpful. Yeah, exactly. Because then it's like second nature. You know exactly where to put them.
Yeah, they check this box, and that box.
Exactly. Yeah.
Keith says this is one of the best guests I've seen on your shows, Chris. Really knowledgeable and also spells all the words the proper way.
Yeah, go on, Keith.
Keith is our ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Of course. Yeah.
Uh, he also often wins the merch giveaway to the point that it was a meme.
Oh my god.
Do
Lucky.
you have different cost structures when selling SEO services to different countries? Great point. Because
Mhm.
a dollar goes a lot further in the United States than it does in like the Philippines. So how do you price that?
Yeah, so I mean, this part of my agency, I work with enterprise and luxury, so it's all high ticket.
Okay.
So the audit price is fixed at one cost, and people can generally see if they can afford it or not. Uh, and if they can, they usually go on to work with us for longer as well. But it's quite because of the work that needs to be done. It is obviously pricey, and it gets more expensive depending on what the client needs. So, say if you want 10 countries, that's going to cost very different than 60 countries. And if you also want links for all of those 60 countries, that's also going to cost different. So, yeah, it is case by case again.
Okay. We got a lot of people here. So let me ask this. How do you go about finding country specific links? Because I'm somewhat of a link seller. Somewhat. I sell a lot of links. And whenever somebody asks me for a specific dot whatever country, it's very, very difficult to find. So like, is there any tips you can give on that?
I guess this is probably quite a shit tip, to be honest, but knowing people, who who know others in that country,
Okay.
who knows someone else. So again, I've got friends in many different countries who a lot of them are in marketing, who then know someone who does professional link building in Mexico, which is such a
Okay.
niche thing, isn't it? That's really hard to find. So it is connections. I would say my advice for that is build your international network. We all love networking.
Mhm.
It's really good for you. Do international networking as well, and
Yeah.
you can offer such unique things to people just because of the people you know.
Okay. I may have to message you the next time that comes up. So
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
let's see. Congrats, Kira. You're doing really good talking about this topic.
Oh, thanks.
A geocultural database for marketers could be a great sell. See?
Yeah, well, business venture.
Yeah. Learning. So I assume she means much. Thanks, Kira and Chris.
Aw, it's our pleasure.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you a question on what I should do. So
Okay.
I would love it if I could reach a global audience too.
Mhm.
And since most of the content, like the services and stuff, are all going to be user generated, what would be the best thing for me to do? Just create like legit.com/fr/whatever/whatever. And I'm not going to hold you to any of this. I would love to get your feedback.
Tell me now. Well, I think because I keep saying I prefer subdirectories, I would say subdirectory structure is better for
Okay.
you as well, because yours is e-commerce.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, so e-commerce subdirectories are really, really good. It's relatively easy to implement. It would be for you because you're an SEO by trade.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to manage, and I assume you're not going to have franchises in those different places.
No.
So it would be managed on one dashboard, and I would definitely do that. And it's with the user generated stuff.
Yeah, like for any one of these, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be. Let's have a look.
Again, whenever I'm streaming, my bandwidth goes to hell, but
Oh dear.
it'll get there in a minute. So would I have to have like just because right now they're all in English except for literally maybe less than 10.
You could have, in this case, you could have parameters, to be honest, even though I hate them. You can have a dynamic page. So based on IP. So when like you can tell, so the
Yeah.
machine can tell when you're searching from a certain country, and it automatically generates whatever the language is based on their IP. That would be a tiny bit more difficult for you, but I think that would be the way to go, especially with this little section that I'm looking at, because you can
Okay.
have multiple implementations across the site. So you make your life really difficult, but that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah. So that would go to like legit.com/fr/
Yeah.
the rest of that. And it would
Yeah.
translate that into French. I don't know why we're all picking on the French today, but
So, yeah. So you could that could be multiple ways. It can be a parameter. So if you're searching from France, you would open this link and it would take you straight to the French to French. So it can be a .com folder, just a global domain, but then it opens up to a French parameter because of the IP. So you can do an IP reference for this section of the site. For any static pages that you'd have, just have a subfolder that you'll have to translate.
Okay. Excellent. Well, when we get some other projects out of the way, I may have to talk to you some more about this.
Yeah, please. I can talk about it all day.
Well, I meant like actually implementing.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got one more question and then we'll start to wrap up. It says, thanks, Kira and Mr. Chris. See, that's another one, Mr. Chris. A lot of people call me that. And like, I was like, you don't have to call me Mr., but apparently it's a thing. So today we've really shown me that I have a very long way to go on SEO, and I'm really looking forward to working on your mentoring as I requested earlier. That's great. And just to point out, you say you've got a long way to go, but Kira was just saying it's been only 18 months or something for you, right? Since that you've been on your own.
Not even 1 year.
Oh, not even a year. So
Not
yeah,
even a year.
stuff can
Yeah,
happen
just don't
fast.
believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, if people want to learn more from you or get in touch with you, where should they go?
LinkedIn would be the best one.
All right, let's bring.
Yeah, and then if you just message me on there, and then I could give you my email through LinkedIn.
And that's the right LinkedIn?
Correct. That is me.
All right, I'll go ahead and put that in there. And you already have the updated to your profile picture to you speaking, so good for you.
Exactly, yeah.
I literally did that like the first one of these I did the first time I spoke in public. Literally, like after I had somebody take my pictures with my cell phone while I was talking, and literally as soon as I got done, I updated all my profile pictures to that.
Yeah, because it makes you you've got street cred now. You've been on stage. Yeah.
It's a bit silly to be honest, but it really does carry a lot of like cachet with people. So
It does. Yeah, exactly. It's weird. When I wasn't speaking, I would see people on stage on LinkedIn and just think, "Oh my God, they're so good," and I'm not, which is so stupid and not true, but
sorry. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, same for me. I was like, I would think, wow, he's a big deal. He's on stage, and like,
yeah.
I mean, it
But
is a big deal, but it's not that
but
big.
it's not really. Yeah, exactly. You start to realize that, and I'm grateful for the journey,
Yeah.
and realizing that so early on, that it's not. I could just change it to I don't know, my eyebrow, and I'd still be fine now, but I won't do that.
Yeah. So do you plan to do any more speaking?
I would love to. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Enjoy like helping people and just sharing information. So yeah, it's definitely in the books. After the summit, there's been quite an influx of new clients, so I need to sort those out first. Had to do a lot of hiring. Um,
That's
so
another advantage to speaking is it's amazing how much like that personal connection means to people, right? Like I've
exactly.
generated a lot of business out of it too. So
Yeah, exactly. Very useful and just yeah, very grateful for all the opportunities.
yeah, it's counterintuitive because like I've had people I've talked to for years and never really got past the like I don't know what you call it, like just barely knowing them acquaintance stage. Meet them in
Mhm.
person for 10 minutes and it's like a whole different thing. So
Exactly. Yeah, it's personalization, super important, but yeah.
yeah, I think for a lot of people it's still kind of old fashioned in that way that it's not you don't truly know someone until you meet them in person, I guess.
Oh, I agree 100%. I go to see all my clients no matter how far they are.
Really?
So, yeah. So that's a USP as well to one of the people that was asking before. All
Yeah.
of them, like, they can be in New Zealand, and I'd probably go see them.
Oh wow. That's I've got one client that I've worked with since I still had a day job,
Mhm.
and he lives somewhere near me, and I've never seen him in person
Okay,
in
well,
in like 9 years.
probably do that.
So that's I mean, you know, I've been getting results for 9 years. So
Yeah. Oh,
my
wow,
point is that
9 years. That's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. But I mean, you know, my point is that obviously that's unique because I've never met any client. I think I've
Mhm.
met one in all the years in person. Even like my co-founder at Legit, I speak to him every day through Slack, but I've met him 3 times in person, and 2 of those were because we just happened to be in the same city for some other reason.
Oh,
So
that's but you still, you're still working together and doing great things, so it's
yeah,
yeah, it's whatever works for you, isn't it?
yeah. All right. Well, we've been here for over an hour now. So anything else you want to cover, or any questions or anything?
I just wanna say thank you so much for your time and your wonderful questions. A lot of the time, podcasts can be quite awkward, like, with timing and, like, awkward pauses. None of that today, so
Thank you.
really yeah, really appreciate your podcasting skills.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I will love to have you on again sometime. So all right. Well, I think that'll do it. And next week, programming update, I'll have the one I was supposed to have on Tuesday who was not feeling well and had to reschedule. I'm going to butcher his name too, but it's Vaibhav Sharda, who is the founder of autoblogging.ai. See, his name is way more complicated than yours
It
was.
is, yeah.
So he'll be on to talk to us about AI and mass AI, and then I'm going to take a break for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back with some other great guests after that. So if you want to make sure that you catch all of that, you just click subscribe and notification or whatever it is on whatever platform you're watching on. I've been told that doing that will increase the amount of subscriptions. I've never seen any evidence that supports that, but it's worth it. Anyway, follow Kira on LinkedIn, and she will be able to help you out. And if you happen to run into her anywhere, thank you for taking the time to share with us today. And while we're thanking people, I'd like to thank all of you for spending some time with us today. You have a lot of options and a lot of things that you can choose to do with your time, and you chose to spend it with us. That's something I will always appreciate and never take for granted. So thank you. And last but not least, figure out what you want out of life and go out and get it because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the world. I'll see you next week. Peace.